He is a colleague of mine from NFL Network, and we always love chatting football with him. Also a part of Roman, GetRoman.com/coach. We'll discuss all of that with our friend Brian Billick. How are you, Brian?
How you doing, sir?
I am doing great. What do you think of this matchup? I love it. I'm excited.
I do. It's the thing I love it is the yin and yang. You know, we got the spread out offense of the Kansas City Chiefs, the great defense of San Francisco. It's old versus new, good versus bad, cats versus dogs. I mean, it's the whole thing.
Living together in Miami. That's what they're doing.
That's right. Who knows?
And again, I want to just pause on that for a second and kind of go down the Wayback Machine with you. What advice would you give? Obviously, he's going to get this advice from his dad, and he's been through it as an offensive coordinator before. What advice would you give Kyle Shanahan going into his first Super Bowl based on your experience back in the day in Tampa with the Ravens?
Well, the good thing for Kyle is, like you said, he grew up with it. I mean, he sat at dinner every night talking football with his dad and has been through these so many times because of his dad. He's got a lot of, although I remember, and, you know, I obviously didn't have that experience. I remember, you know, a number of coaches reached out, and Dan Reeves reached out to me, which I thought was great. I had played under Dan, and he sat in for a good hour and a half telling me about how to orchestrate the week and what you needed to do. And then when he got done, he says, well, you know what? I haven't won one of these things, so just do the opposite of everything I just told you. You know, the biggest advice that you get, and it's legitimate, is you basically have got to use this week because of just the hectic nature of what it is down at the Super Bowl site. You got to get everything in. You have to have the game plan in. We had our entire game plan in. We could have played that first Sunday of the bye week by design. And so you get it all in. And of course, the first part of the week is all the, you really have to rely on your administrative staff because the tickets and the cars and the flights and you get all that behind you. You kind of mentally get the game plan in so that when you get down to the site itself, now you just have to kind of freshen it up. And practice is really kind of a relief because it gets you away from the madness that's going on. It's the only thing that feels normal to you during the week of Super Bowl is actually being out of practice.
What was the biggest distraction? You know, we in the media talk about distractions because we actually like when something does come up that we could bite into, that maybe we're a factor in everything. What was happening with your team at the time, Brian?
Well, you know, we had a pretty experienced team, and I'll say the league actually does a pretty good job of, early on it's a little hectic, but by the time you get to Wednesday and really start your preparation, they dial it back. I was always more concerned and caution them about, look, don't load too much up on your own plate. I mean, all these guys have their own radio and TV deals and whatever. And of course, I started the week out by accusing the amassed media of being ambulance chasers. And, so that started the week out just right when it had to do with the Ray Lewis situation and all that.
Right.
So that kind of set a tone that made it kind of interesting.
So how did that work for you when you called them ambulance chasers? What were you trying to create there?
Not real well, other than we kicked the you-know-what out of New York. Had we lost, it would have not gone well. But I always had a dream. I always wished I could have gotten back to that second Super Bowl. Because after I stood up there and basically called them ambulance chasers and that they weren't qualified to do what they were doing and whatever, I was dying to the next time I could get in that situation to step into that news conference and say, and another thing.
Yeah, I guess because, again, coaches will try and, put some sort of firewall around their team. I don't know. Obviously, I don't think either one of these teams have to do that. I do remember when I was covering the Super Bowl, another Super Bowl in Tampa between the Steelers and the Cardinals, that Ken Wisenhunt was full on employing the "nobody believes in us" card. I mean, just he was playing. Sure. He was dealing that card to basically everybody. Like he was somebody like handing out business cards at some sort of convention. Like here's my "nobody believes in us" card, and it almost worked.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Us against the world, and now you're right. I don't think these two teams both are so so strong in what they do, although the style is certainly different. And it'd be hard for the coach to get up there and play that card because obviously Kansas City is so highly thought of, and certainly San Francisco and everything that they're doing, they'll find something else to feel disrespected.
Brian Billick here on the Rich Eisen Show. Andy Reid, I'm not going to tell any tales out of school. I'm going to give the top 10 storylines that fans could expect for the week. He's going to be way, way up there. What do you think's going on between his temples right now, Brian?
You know, and obviously you're not going to get a hint of it because Andy is so subdued. Andy and I are classmates from back in the BYU days.
That's right.
And Andy, you're so happy for Andy after an incredible career to finally get an opportunity, if he can indeed. And he's obviously going to hold that at arm's length. It's just something you just don't let yourself go there, particularly Andy at this stage in his career. And, you know, I don't know how many more years Andy's going to coach, but as you always hear, you know, you never know when you're going to get back. And it's been, 15 years since he was on his first one. So, yeah, I can't imagine he's just not going to let himself go there emotionally until after the game.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, what keeps your coach younger is having someone like Mahomes to coach, right? He's got
that'd do it. Right. That'd youngin me right up right away. What a spectacular talent. And Andy has had, you're right, how much fun is it now to kind of tap into a whole nother vein of offense and what you do for this guy who's just so spectacular in all the things that he can do.
Well, you know, I'm trying to hold myself back from going here just yet because there's still so much time between now and kick, but it's difficult for me to not think that this is Mahomes' moment, that this is it. It's his first time in the Super Bowl, and I know we've seen before, first time in the Super Bowl. I mean, Marino went once, never got back. I get it. I just have a feeling like we're about to see, even against a defense that would allow him to burnish this reputation, this new, one would say, legacy, that this is a legacy potential birth for him. I'm wondering what you think, Brian.
Yeah, that catapult to obviously what he has done to this point. He has a solid footing for a potential Hall of Fame career. Now, we got a long way to go. He's very, very young, obviously. And still has to follow up with it, stay healthy and the like. But just the example you gave, Dan Marino being in that same, we're going to be back to a bunch of these. Well, you just don't know that. It's going to be, and obviously, and we're going to talk about it forever this week and the next week. I'm going to go up to films and do my playbook segments this week, and it's been fun crawling back through the film. Obviously, with Kansas City, it's all about there are just so many weapons. And no matter what you do, okay, you double Hill. And you double Kelsey. All right, well, that still leaves some pretty good guys in Hardman and Robinson and Watkins one-on-one that can leave you vulnerable. If you think you're going to get home with just a 3 or 4-man rush, and now, like we saw against Tennessee, Mahomes decides to pull it down and break the edge, then, I mean, there's just so many ways to get beat. But San Francisco, I mean, how impressive was that?
No
to
doubt.
Win a championship game and throw the ball only 8 times, to run the ball that well, that was just stunning.
Yeah, Brian Billick here on the Rich Eisen Show. Yesterday, I made the analogy. It was like a 5-year-old in an elevator pressing the same button over and over and over and over again because they just enjoy watching it light up and then just keep pressing the button. That's the way Kyle Shanahan was with Mostert and the run. I guess when you see it's working, how do you not stop pushing that button, right?
You don't, and I give them credit. Of course, this is inherent to what they do, their commitment to the run. Because there's times you'll talk yourself out as a coach. You know, you've got something going, and you start to think, well, you know, I'd have coaches all the time go, well, no, let's stay away from the inside zone because we're gashing them with it, and they got to start adjusting. I'm like, well, how about we let's see if they really do adjust, okay? How about we keep running those plays until they show us they can actually stop it? And Green Bay absolutely didn't matter what they did, what the number count was, who they dropped down. It was like nothing they could do. But I will say this, and Sean O'Hara and I were talking about this, because when you go back, the first thing that came to mind to me of this matchup was the 2007 Super Bowl of New England and the New York Giants. Mm-hmm. New England was number one in offense and explosive plays. It was Brady and Moss and Watson and Falk, all that whole group. And who came in? New York with that 4-man rush.
Yep.
And what that allowed them to do the back end. And an interesting side note, how about that? The architect of that defense that won the Super Bowl for the Giants, Steve Spagnuolo, is now the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. How about that conversation? Andy walking into Spagnola's office going, hey, remember what you did to what do you think they're going to try to do to us? What page are they going to pull with that great four-man rush that San Francisco has? What might we be ready for? It'd be a great conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously Mahomes is a different quarterback than Brady, but the analogy is without question there. And obviously, the issue to me, having seen it, it's amazing that they held Henry less than 100 yards, and you're thinking they did great against the run. That they should be better, the Chiefs defense, against the run for San Francisco, right? And to me, this game, Brian Billick, comes down to, can that defensive line that you point out, that comes in to put just 4 sets of hands in the dirt, you have to scheme your way, that they do get the pressure on Mahomes and win this football game and set the edge where Mahomes can't gain the edge. That to me is the win-loss of Super Bowl 54. I wonder what you think.
And the hard part will be for that four-man rush, and I'm doing, again, on Playbook a segment to show it, that the hard thing is you can't be the hard-charging, we're going to get a sack. That's not what's going to win the game for you. If you stick to that four-man rush, and there, you got to talk about 5 first-round draft choices on that defensive line. They can rotate guys through. It's going to be a good matchup. But you've got to maintain, contain, and you've got to fill. You got to mush rush. There's a couple instances I'm showing where Bosa comes around the edge and it can be spectacular. But if you open up that gap between you and the defensive tackle, we saw it against Tennessee, where Mahomes will just step up between the two, get to the outside, either fire the 60-yard touchdown down the field or pull the ball down and run. So that four-man rush can't be an all-out, let's get to the quarterback as much as it is. Let's just keep him as tight as we can in the pocket. Yes, he can beat us from there, but we know what he's going to do if he gets outside.
Brian Billick here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is Roman? What are you doing with Roman, Brian? What's that about?
You know what? It's been fun to watch how people become more and more aware of GetRoman.com. When you get older, like you and I, Rich, like you and I, you got stuff going on. And you need to take, you don't go to the doctor enough. When you do go, it takes a month to get in there. I don't care if it's ED, hair loss, cold sores, whatever. In the privacy of your own home, you get online, GetRoman.com, U.S. licensed physician. And most importantly, you can get the pharmaceuticals that you're guaranteed. The amount of counterfeit pharmaceuticals out there is stunning to me. You go to GetRoman.com, you get the help from U.S. licensed physician, and you get the right pharmaceuticals for whatever you need. 2
last things for you, Brian. Do you have a prediction on the game? Or were you reserving that? What do you got for me?
Boy, in this one, I don't know how you don't go with Kansas City. But like that New York game and the Giants game, this is a unique matchup that, it's going to be hard. Now, I was kidding with the guys the other day. I've got a book written by Newt Rockne in 1934. And no, he didn't give it to me personally. But it is a book that says if you've got to be good on one side of the ball or the other, be good on offense because you're never out of it. And that's really the thing for me with Kansas City. No matter how the game goes, even if it turnovers and whatever, and San Francisco is running the ball like they did against the Packers, Kansas City just never feels like they're out of it. That's awful hard to overcome.
Okay. And do you remember the first time you met Reid? You got that story? When did you actually meet him?
Oh boy, he was an offensive lineman. He was a little younger than I was,
right.
And it was actually I came back and coached the JV team. I can't. Andy and I didn't really didn't know each other that well. It was more post that we were both BYU grads and had done some things. But Andy's the real deal. He's just as good. And what you see, people got to know what you see in the news conference. That subtle, subdued, kind of mumbling. That's Andy. That's no act. That's Andy through it.
So when he says he had a cheeseburger and went to sleep to celebrate the AFC Championship game.
Well, the only thing he lied there is that it was one cheeseburger. It was not a cheeseburger. I promise you that.
Now, was Jim McMahon the quarterback when you were the grad assistant? Was he there?
He was. Yeah, Jim was. And we had Steve Young. And that whole progression through there. Jim was with the varsity and just tearing things up. When I was the JV coach there, I had a young, early Steve Young and some things. So it was a hell of a team.
So Steve Young and McMahon and Andy Reid were all at BYU kind of at the same time that you were there. Is that
right? It all kind of flows through, doesn't it? It was kind of when you look back on it in the group that kind of Mark Wilson was a guy as well. in there. And of course, to have Jim, I had Jim for a year in Minnesota later on, which was a real gem because he's the real deal now. I mean, he's a different. Some of the sideline conversations with Jim,
right,
in itself would sell some books.
Brian, take care of yourself. Thanks for the time.
All right, sounds good.
We'll see you down in Miami at Coach Billick, Brian Billick, Super Bowl winning head coach, my compadre on Playbook on NFL Network. Great show, shot at NFL Films.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download The Rich Eisen Show app.